Failure is a topic that nobody likes to talk about. But here's something that we all have in common. Every single one of us has failed at some point in our life. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 80, male or female, rich or poor, we've all experienced failure. The way you respond to failure determines whether it's going to be a defining moment in your life. So today, let's talk about how you can use failure to help you grow into a better version of yourself. I recently read this book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, which talks about turning every obstacle into an opportunity. And there's a chapter called In Praise of Failure, which talks about how failure is not the opposite of success, but actually part of success. You can't have one without the other. There's this story in the book about Epicurus, who was a Greek philosopher who lived between 341 and 270 BC. One day, he was hanging out with his friends and they asked him, "Epicurus, you talk about accepting whatever life throws at you, but what if I lose everything? What if I lose my health, my money, my family?" And he said, "Well, those are precisely the things you should prepare for. Those are the obstacles you need to train yourself to overcome." Now, when you think about it like that, failure isn't really something that you fear. It's just another obstacle to overcome. And every obstacle is just another opportunity to become stronger. So why do people fear failure so much? Well, first off, you might think it's because failure feels bad. But actually, no emotion, good or bad, lasts forever. When you win, you're only happy for about 10 days. When you lose, you're only sad for about 10 days. Our emotions are like the weather. They're always changing. So the fact that failure feels bad isn't really why we fear it. We know that it will pass. You probably fear failure because you think it means you're a failure. You think it means you're worthless. But that's not true. Actually, if you want to know who the real losers are, let me tell you. The real losers are the people who don't learn from their failures. A long time ago, there was this famous Chinese general named Sun Tzu who wrote this book called The Art of War, which is still studied today by military leaders around the world. And in the book, Sun Tzu says, the whole secret of successful living lies in finding the proper way of doing things. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this channel, find the proper way of doing things. And after trying different things and getting advice from mentors and experts, I found out that there are very specific things you can do to turn your life around and start succeeding in work, relationships, and business. Now, I share all of these strategies completely for free on this channel. But most people don't take advantage of them. Most people would rather just keep failing over and over again. So ask yourself, who is really failing here? Is it the person who takes action, fails, learns from the failure, adjusts and tries again? Or is it the person who doesn't take any action at all? Obviously, the answer is the latter. So, you see, failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. If you look at the word failure backwards, it's success. So, when you fail, you need to adjust your actions and try again. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. And that's how you eventually succeed. When you fail, you get to roll all the lessons you learned into the next thing you do, and you do that thing better. That's called compounding. Now, compounding is the 8th wonder of the world. You see, if you compound negative behaviors, you get worse. But if you compound positive behaviors, you get better and better and better. So failure is only bad if you don't learn from it. There's this quote in the book, The Obstacle is the Way, that says, "Nothing changes unless you change. Nothing gets better unless you get better." And that's why, whenever someone tells me they're failing, I always ask them, "What did you learn?" Because I know that if they're honest with themselves, they will have learned something. Maybe they learned that they bit off more than they could chew. Maybe they realized they weren't qualified for the thing they were trying to do. Or maybe they realized that they didn't do the necessary preparation before they took action. Whatever it was, if you reflect on your experiences honestly, you will be able to identify areas where you need to improve. I remember the first time I tried to date women. I thought that I was doing pretty well until one day I was rejected, and it crushed me. I was devastated. I felt worthless. and I couldn't understand why she wouldn't go out with me. It wasn't until years later that I realized that I was coming off as a total creep. This goes back to the importance of having mentors. Had I had a mentor back then, he could have told me that I was coming off as a creep. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache and a lot of time, but since I didn't have a mentor, I had to experience rejection firsthand in order to learn the lesson. So whenever you fail, look inside yourself and ask, what did I learn? Another thing I want you guys to consider is that failure is a great teacher. It gives you knowledge that you simply can't get anywhere else. For example, I wanted to become a writer, but I didn't know anything about writing. No school had taught me how to write. No YouTube video had taught me how to write. But I had a burning desire to learn how to write. So I took massive action. I wrote 60 pages a day for 2 years. That's over 40,000 pages. And even though I wrote all of that garbage, I don't regret it because through that process I discovered what works and what doesn't work when it comes to writing, and now I can teach you guys what works. So if you want to learn what works when it comes to relationships, business, or personal growth, you need to put yourself out there and get some experience. Only then will you be able to truly know what works and what doesn't. You see, you never really learn anything unless you do it yourself. Even if you read 1,000 books on how to build a business, it's nothing compared to actually building a business and experiencing all of the ups and downs firsthand. There's simply no substitute for experience, and you can't get that kind of experience without taking action and failing. Think about it. Would you rather take my advice on relationships and business, or would you rather take the advice of some random dude online who has never had a real relationship or built a real business? Probably my advice, right? Why? Because I've done it. I've experienced it firsthand. And even though I've had many mentors, I can still give you better advice because I've done it myself. I've failed in relationships. I've had massive success in relationships. I've started multiple businesses. I've lost money in business. I've made money in business. And through all of these experiences, I've learned what works and what doesn't. And now I can teach you what works. And this applies to absolutely everything in life. Relationships, business, personal growth. If you want to learn what works, you need to get out there and experience it. So remember, brothers, failure is not bad. It's part of success. The only time failure is bad is when you don't learn from it. Use failure as a fuel to make you work harder and smarter next time. Use failure as a way to learn valuable lessons that will help you grow into a better man. Use failure as an opportunity to become stronger. By the way, don't forget to show some love and hit like for the algorithm to see the next best way to level up as a man. Watch these videos here.